All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's talk about quite a number of issues here. The President's speech, the 13th Parliament in tray, and the CS nominees as well. My guests are with me in studio. Remember, Gladys Boss, Deputy Speaker, is here. Thank you so much for making time. Ledama Olekina, Senator for Narok, is also here with us. Asante sana for making time. Honorable Jack Wamboka, Member of Parliament for Bumula, is here. Asante sana for making time. And Honorable Martha Wangari, Member of Parliament for Gilgil, thank you so much for making time. And Honorable Boss, I'll start with you. What were the highlights of the President's speech yesterday for you?
I think, and first I'm happy to be back after a big commercial break.
Yeah,
but I think the highlights of the President's speech is that he was actually delivering his plan to Parliament, the plan. And he talked about the same issues that he raised during the manifesto launch, but specifically related to what interventions Parliament could give. He was very persuasive. He basically, like when he talked about NHIF, he said if you're saving 200 shillings, after 30 years of working, you will only have 72,000 shillings.
Yeah.
That was a persuasive punch so that when he brings his agenda to say we might have to increase our savings or create a budget where government matches your savings, for every 2 shillings, the government will put in a shilling. So if you save 6,000 a year, the government will pay 3,000 so that he can push a savings initiative to the public and try and get the public to be part of it. I think that was very important. So I found it as a persuasive speech. When he talked about healthcare, he said most families are one illness away from poverty.
Yeah.
So that must stop. Everybody in Kenya should be able to pay for their treatment.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to revamp NHIF. He talked about also increasing enterprise by making sure there's affordable credit. Mm-hmm. And he explained how we can do it for people to have affordable credit. Yeah. He talked about the punitive methodology being used by CRB, where he said it's better to have a point system where if you can have a good credit rating or a poor credit rating. Then that way you access credit according to your credit rating. That's a better way, and it still encourages people to get into enterprise.
Yeah.
He talked about the Hustler Fund enterprise also, where he says we have to stop criminalizing enterprise, that everyone should be allowed to be given a decent space to work.
Yeah.
Basically speaking to the fact that we'll have to create secure, safe spaces for these persons in the informal sector to be able to operate from.
Yeah.
It will make their income more predictable. And I think I can end it by a good example. If someone, a mama mboga, wants to put in 1,000 shillings to buy her wares for the day, sometimes she only buys wares worth 200 because she doesn't know if Kanjo is going to come and take all her wares, and she loses everything.
Yeah.
So if she knows she has a safe place to work, she will put in more, she will make more money, and she will be able to have a living wage for her family.
Yeah, but
so it was a persuasive...
Now that you're still on the floor, has this NSSF savings been thought through properly? Because those were saying that it will further exacerbate the disparities between those who have and those who don't have. So if you can put in 10 million, it means the government will then give you 15 million, will give you an extra 5 million, as opposed to a Mamboga who would probably just do 6,000 and get an additional 3,000. Wouldn't that then further exacerbate the disparities that already exist? Remember,
the reason why you want to put that saving also and have that money there, the larger the money saved, it means government can borrow from that money to be able to pay for affordable housing, to be able to pay for certain amenities that help the people at the lower bottom of the economic ladder. So you must realize that money is going to be used to actually change the discrepancies in the economic structures.
Okay.
So that's one. People are forgetting it's also money that government will borrow. What is the money that we borrow from other countries? It's their own savings by their own people. So yes, if somebody can save 5 million shillings, the good thing is that 5 million shillings is available to government to be able to fund some government projects.
Okay.
And be able to help persons. Okay. When you talk about, and this is how that's how it's going to be done, we've always said about 4.7 million people are formally employed. 16 million or so are actually what the Kenya Bureau of Statistics calls unlicensed.
Yeah.
Yes, the informal workers, the boda bodas, the mama bogas. When you tell them that you will have access to the Hustler Fund, what you do is you begin to document them. So when you document them and you have given them access to affordable credit, you're able to persuade them that you can contribute 500 shillings to your National Security Fund for your retirement. Then we will end old age poverty. Many of us know that our parents live off us, and yet they've been working all their lives.
All right.
And so if that can end, and so these 16 million people will be brought in, and their own economic status and lives shall change. The plan is thought through. I have been involved in sitting in meetings with amazing Kenyan economists, and I've learned a lot, and I've realized it's doable.
All right.
We just have to give them the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, Ledama, what were the highlights for you?
I think, for me, the president was very strategic. Is what is referred as strategic positioning. He knows very well that we have 3 arms of government, and for him to be able to perform any of his tasks, he will need the legislative arm of government. I keep on saying that the president has the sword to be able to execute his mandate. The parliament has the pass to be able to fund that, and the judiciary has the power of judgment. Now, when you look at some of his proposals yesterday, some of them, to me, were a little bit utopian because of where we live at the current state. We have to be candid enough and tell our Kenyans that we do have a presidential system of government. We do not have a parliamentary system of government like the Westminster form of government. The president suggested yesterday that he would like to persuade Parliament to be able to amend their standing orders so that cabinet secretaries can be able to sit in Parliament and answer. I do not want to see a stranger sitting on the floor of the House, because even yesterday, it was only the president who was invited to be able to come and sit there because he is given the powers by the Constitution. His deputy could not. He was sitting in the Speaker's gallery. So that is issue number 1. If you now come up and say, I would like to bring back CDF, you know you're preaching to the choir. You know the MPs want to be able to be funded, to be able to do other projects so that they can get re-elected. When you introduce something like the Senate Oversight Fund, you know the senators will buy that. So he was being very, very strategic. So the first thing is that we have to demystify. What does it mean, or what does it entail for the president to call for us to amend our standing orders so that we can have cabinet secretaries coming to the floor of the House and responding? The first thing is this: are we electing a government from Parliament, or is the government elected independently by citizens? That's number 1. What does our Constitution say about the role of cabinet secretaries? In fact, there is a paradigm shift from getting technocrats to politicians. You know, it is like we are not so sure what form of government we want. Because for me, I would say, if we have a Westminster form of government, then by all means, let's change the Constitution so that it is the members of Parliament who will select the head of government from the floor of the House, so that they can be able to be answerable. In fact, I think what he was saying yesterday, if I can be kind to part of his speech where he was proposing to bring in those changes, is that he was reminding his proposed appointees that when Parliament, as per the Constitution, when you look at Article 125 of the Constitution, when you're called to provide evidence, if you're a cabinet secretary, you must appear. You remember in the last Parliament, there were a couple of cabinet secretaries who were censured, like the former cabinet secretary for energy, Charles Keter. He was censured by the Senate for not appearing. So he was telling them, you can appear in Parliament, but committees. So really, we have to be very, very careful on what we're saying. There are a few things that I would have wished to hear the president saying. If we're talking about affordable housing, the plan was very good, but I did not quite hear how it is going to be executed. The speech was very brief. It was sort of like he was laying out the platform of some of the things that he would like to do. But I think let's move from the talk.
Yeah.
Let's go to the action and say, the police are hurting there.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do to give them affordable housing. We're going to give them houses. Because if you remember, even in the last administration, the police were given houses, but where are they? They were removed from those houses again. So really, I think there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
We will go through from Parliament, from the proposals of the CDF,
yeah.
the Senate Oversight Fund. We'll talk about the issue of the health. So I think in a nutshell, what I can say is that what the president was trying to do, he was trying to be able to get Parliament to support his idea. You know, so he was that's why he was very, very brief. But is it practical?
Yeah.
Is it doable? There are certain things are.
Okay.
You know, and maybe we can get into it in detail when we debate further.
Yeah, Jack?
Thank you, my brother. We had the president yesterday,
Yeah.
and I would want to imagine that we are done with elections, and now it's time to work. So some things. First, the president started by reminding us where the economy is. Okay, it's bad. To some extent, I agree. But when President Kibaki took over power, the economy was in a more worse state than we were actually in negative than what we are today. So the president must now move very quickly out of the election hangovers and start articulating issues. Two, it's time for healing. So some jabs are quite unnecessary. Okay? Don't remind Kenyans about, oh, this was in opposition, this is now government, it is totally unnecessary. Now it's time for the president to come in and heal this nation. Because you remember, a third of Kenyans didn't vote. A third of Kenyans voted for President Ruto. A third of Kenyans voted for Raila Odinga. So elections are over. Let's now focus into the future. Next point, you see, there's some good things that the president talked about. For instance, reworking on the tax regime, you know, to tax wealth more than the enterprises to spur economic growth and all that. That is good. There is one thing that I wanted the president to be deliberate about. How did we reach where we are as a country? And the biggest thing, my brother, is because of corruption. It's because of corruption. Now, instead of telling us that I'm going to claw back 300 billion, first, from where? I would want to understand. Maybe we are saying the president is doing good and is going to, you know, there are like some stalled projects across the country. So we could be saying hallelujah, and they maybe is going to deny to get money meant for some roads, for instance, which are very important in Western and all that. So the president must address the monster in the house. And according to me, is corruption. The retired president told us that we are losing a lot of money to corruption. So what I expect President Ruto to do first is tighten the avenues of stealing, okay? And move and, I mean, let him define himself around corruption.
Okay.
It's a major issue. Then I come from an agricultural area. So when you talk of economic growth, what are you talking about? For instance, I come from a sugar belt region. There must be deliberate actions towards reviving that industry. We have Nzoia, we have Mumias, we have, these are people who are dependent on these things. So there must be, I've been listening to the president for the last couple of speeches, but he has never talked about, for instance, Nzoia sugar, Mumias sugar, Muhoroni sugar, and the sugar industry. We've heard so much about tea. Okay, how are we going to help tea farmers, revive the tea economy? I've heard so much about coffee economy. I want to feel and be part of my president's agenda by him specifically addressing the areas of the Western province.
Okay.
Now, the next point is a subsidy on fertilizer that has been going on. In my constituency, for instance, I can tell you, my brother, only 107 bags reached Bomula constituency, for that matter. So you are saying we are subsidizing fertilizer to spur production, to, factors that harmonize production majorly, if you ask me, because you subsidize fertilizer and fuel is very high. Still, the cost of production is going to be very high.
Okay.
So we want our president to think through some of these statements he's making.
Okay.
Think through, and perhaps he may have to let experts do their work.
Okay.
So by the time he comes to address us as the public, he is concrete in terms of way forward, and just have the proper people in office to do proper work.
All right.
Thank you.
Wangari?
Thank you, Trevor. And I think I'll just join on a few issues that were delivered yesterday. I think we've had longer speeches, but when you're asked what exactly was said, you're not able to pick. So this was very short and precise. I think most of us were getting ready to stay there up to 6 o'clock, but he was short and precise. And a few issues stood out for me. First of all, the issue of unity. He was very clear that we have come from a campaign period. It was hotly contested, and we are now going forward as one family. I think for me that is very important in terms of healing the country, in terms of realizing that when you're president for everybody, whether they voted for you or they did not vote for you. So it was clear in terms of even development agenda that will cut across the country from every corner, from how, without considering how you voted, what party you belonged to. So that for me was very critical. One thing that he also talked about is the issue of women in leadership. And I think it's a point that normally we would really just bury. It's baby steps, even in Parliament. I've been here since 11th Parliament. We had 68 women. 12th Parliament, we had 79. Right now, we are talking 82 women, 29 elected in single-member constituencies where I sit myself. Quite a growth. And I think it's a mere 10%, but worth celebrating. And I think this cuts across all the three arms of government. And it was a pleasure to just sit there and see the CJ being a woman, the DCJ is a woman, Chief Registrar is a woman, that is in the judiciary. So some of the things that we are celebrating, even in terms of growth of democracy. Yeah. The other issue that he spoke about, I think would be, for me, and I'll pick from what Senator von Narok has spoken about. I mean, law is made for man, not man for the law. And for me, the issues that the president was trying to talk about in terms of even getting CSAs to get a way of coming to parliament, something we should really consider, because since 11th parliament, we tried to censure CSAs even in the Senate. But what fruits does that bear? You have a question that you ask about maybe a disappearance. I remember last parliament I asked about a young man who disappeared from Karonga in my area. Even today, that question has never been answered. The family is in agony. You're not able to call the CS to the floor or to the committee. They don't show up. So what do you do? And I think what he was trying to do is bringing the sanctity of the place of parliament in this administration. And by the way, he will not be out there to gag parliament. Even these appeals he was making, he was appealing to the minority side to also join in this agenda, because he knows very well you cannot do it without the parliament. And you also cannot work without judiciary. So he would say we'll give more money and we'll give autonomy to the judiciary to do their work. We'll give autonomy to the police to do their work. We'll also give autonomy to parliament. And that also does not take our role, because if you sit in parliament, and by the way, out of 50 million, and we are just, 416, it's quite a privilege to be in that position. So when you sit in that parliament, it does not claw back your role. That is why the issues of tea caucuses, the issue of sugar caucuses, people who have serious issues from their areas are free to bring them in terms of legislation, are free to bring them to lobby government, are even free to bring them during the budgeting area. But one thing I agree with Honorable Jack Wamboka. We spoke about cutting back the 300 billion from this budget, but we also must speak about the 300 billion that is lost through graft, that is not accounted for every year. That means then we'll save maybe 600 billion, because at the end of the day, we must not be borrowing to pay salaries. And I think even at your own house or your own business, it is not good austerity measures, it's not good financial management to actually borrow to just finance salaries. Yeah. And I think that is the hole that we must get ourselves out of. And how do we do that? We do that by getting every arm of government to do their role. And I think he's very clear in terms of you cannot do it alone. Okay. The executive will not do it alone. The executive will need parliament. These legislations have to be unpacked in parliament, because when you talk housing, these regulations will come to the Committee of Delegated Legislation. We'll have the Committee on Housing to sit and scrutinize it. When we talk about NSSF, even this saving culture that we are talking about, there is a maximum, by the way. You cannot just be given shilling back for every 2 shillings arbitrary. And I think we have had experts to scrutinize it. That is why there's a maximum of 6,000 every year, because you also cannot just open it and leave it, uncontrolled. So some of these things will definitely come with a new cabinet, and I think that's why now the next step comes for vetting of the cabinet secretaries, so that they get the full mandate, get the PSS in place, get the government running, but also the experts who must, by the way, they don't have to be members of parliament and they don't have to be CSs. They may be working behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, it must be a concerted effort from every person who is charged with any small responsibility to make this work.
All right. Let's take a quick break. When you come back, there's still a lot of feedback coming through, and I'll come back with you, boss. We talk about this issue. You mentioned you've been hanging out with economists. We'll find out where this 300 billion is coming from and why 300 billion out of a deficit of 900 billion. Why not 500? Why not 600? Why did he pick specifically 300 billion, and where will that savings be brought from? Also, the feedback that's coming through, I see some of them concerning the CSS nominees. We'll talk about that as well in just a bit. Keep them coming at Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. See you in a bit.